If crafting is the thing you do to stay happy, to stay sane, to relax, to keep everything in your life together, then it's really special that you can take that activity and turn it into something that benefits someone else, something that is a really special, thoughtful, love-filled gift that you get to give. Hi, my name's Mark and welcome to the channel. Now that the holidays are behind us and I've given away all of my gift knits for 2024, I wanted to sit down, talk about the culture of gift knitting, and share some of the things that I've knit for others in this past year. Now, I normally say I'm not a gift knitter, so if that's you, or you found yourself knitting things for others in your life, then stick around for today's topic. Let's get into it. I'll start by saying that normally I'm not a gift knitter. Most everything I make is for myself, and for a while I felt really guilty about that. I should be making things for my family members, for friends, for anyone that has a baby. And then I started to discover plenty of people out there who only knit for themselves. And I see a lot of young people who are just learning to knit or crochet, do any sort of handcraft, and they say, I'm learning to do this so that I can make clothes and accessories for myself. I'm not learning this craft so that I can churn out projects to give to people, whether or not they want to receive them. And I think there's a lot of validity to that. And we'll talk more about it as the video goes on. So typically, I'm knitting for myself. 9 times out of 10, what I have on the needles is a new sweater for me, or maybe an accessory, or something else that I want to make for myself. And as we've established, that's perfectly fine. However, as my own wardrobe continues to grow, I'm finding myself more and more keen on the idea of making things that will be passed on to others. So this year I ended up doing a fair amount of gift knitting, and I'll show you everything briefly at the start of this video, and then we'll come back to it and we'll talk about those projects in a little bit more detail. Before we look at any of the projects, I wanted to say that gift knitting really seems like a strong culture. And the reason I say culture is because people take it really seriously. And if you're a knitter, a crocheter, any sort of handcrafter, I want to hear from you in the comments. Are you familiar with gift knitting or gift crocheting? Do you participate? Have you been burned by it? It's a loaded topic. I'll give one example for now, and we'll talk more about this later in the video. At the local yarn shop where I work, I see countless customers come in with extremely long to-do lists of projects that will be gifted. And for a lot of them, it becomes a huge weight on their shoulders with the deadlines, with the expectation for things to look the way they planned, sometimes the cost alone to keep up with all of the fiber and supplies, and then they run the risk of making something handmade, special, beautiful, and giving it to someone that may not appreciate it, or maybe they didn't even want it. So it seems like an established culture that people who craft have the expectation either thrust upon them or they put it upon themselves that they need to be crafting for everyone in their lives. So we'll talk about it. I'll talk about my experience. So let's get started by looking at some of the things that I've gift knit this year. First off, I've got 2 items that I knit for my mom. Now, my mom and my dad both watch this channel. They watch just about every video I put out, and my mom does a little bit of crafting, no knitting or crocheting, and then my dad isn't a crafter at all. So I think it's really sweet that they take the time to watch, and I always tell them, you don't need to watch my videos, but they're very kind to do it, and they're very kind to tell other people in their lives that I have a YouTube channel. So thank you, Mom and Dad. Now that my mom has opened these gifts, I can show them here on the channel. So for her Christmas gift, I made a Sophie scarf out of cashmere, silk, and alpaca, and then a pair of fingerless mitts. And she requested mitts, so I wanted to make sure I had a pair ready to go for her. And the Sophie scarf, I'm hoping, will be something that she enjoys styling or pairing with other outfits to keep her warm. And I have another Sophie scarf here that I'm comparing hers to. You'll see the second one is much larger. It's a Sophie scarf that I did for myself, and because I'm much bigger, my neck circumference is much bigger than hers, I went ahead and adapted the pattern to use more of my yarn for a slightly larger version. And I also think the difference in the two represents our climates pretty well. She lives in southeastern Tennessee, while I'm here in northeastern Ohio, so we have a bit of a colder, more snowy winter than she has, so I think the proportions will work out. Next up is the 27 Color Snood by Bobby Intveld that I made for my friend Megan. I'll talk more about it, but it's made out of wool stock. I think it's fun, colorful, so hopefully it's something that she will enjoy. And lastly, I've got a cardigan that I made for Ned. I talked about this in my video last week or the week before. This is a petite knit pattern. I'll talk more about it later in the video, but he really likes the color. He picked this out. It's Rowan felted tweed. And it's very simple, straightforward. I still have to put buttons on, and he's gonna pick his buttons out from our local yarn shop, but right now we can't go, it's closed, it's Christmas as I'm filming this. So I'll show you standby buttons that I have on hand at home, and we'll see which one he wants to temporarily have on the sweater. So standby options are a sheep button, or this sort of like Celtic knot. I think that's really attractive, and that's really funny. So the Celtic knot might be slightly too big for the button band. That's very attractive on there. But the sheep is really cute. So anyway, I'll put one of those placeholders on, and we'll take this cardigan with us on our next trip, and then when we're back in town and we go to the yarn shop, he'll get to pick his forever buttons. As I was thinking about this video and what I should say, what I should include, and what would be a good conversation starter, the first things that come to mind are always the cons, the negatives of gift knitting. And I made a short list. So on my list, I've got size, color, and style. I think one of the trickiest things when you're gift knitting for someone in your life, especially if it's a family member, where, I don't know, might be slightly harder to gauge what they really want, or they might be too gentle to tell you the truth of if they actually want these things or not. I think oftentimes you can end up choosing something that just isn't the style that your recipient likes to wear, and so then you might risk spending a lot of time, a lot of energy, maybe a lot of money on whatever you're making to give it to a grandchild, a sibling, a parent, whomever, and if it's just not their style or their taste, they may never wear it. And then I think that's when we get the situations of people taking something that's been beautifully crafted and generously given and then putting it into a donation bin. And then you go to your Goodwill store and you find someone's hand knit or hand crocheted Afghan or sweater, or even something that's been personalized with a name or monogram. And it's like, well, that's sad. It's always sad to find those things because you know somebody spent so much energy and put so much love into it, and then the recipient, for whatever reason, didn't appreciate it and didn't even want it. So size, color, and style. I think if you're gift knitting for people, it's important to consider what do they wear, what colors, what shape, what fit, and then try to go with something that they could actually incorporate into their wardrobe, something you could see them wanting to wear and use. You might be in a situation where you can just ask, you can show someone a pattern or a color or get their choice on yarn, but other times you don't want to. You might want to make it a total surprise, or you just don't have the option to get in touch and run it by them. All right, the second point on my cons list is carelessness. Depending on what you've used, what material you've used to make whatever the project is, when you give it to someone, it's up to them to keep it in good shape, to give it a good life. I see so many people come into Around the Table Yarns wanting to make projects for babies, things like a baby blanket, whether it's a stroller blanket or a crib blanket, maybe a little hat for a newborn, a sweater for their first Christmas or winter, and they always worry, rightfully so, about the care. They want something that can be washed and dried and that would be pretty resilient to survive both a baby and the baby's parents or caretakers. So typically we steer them in the direction of superwash wool or cotton blends, maybe acrylic blends, things that can be washed and dried over and over again and aren't going to shrink or felt or get ruined by sort of careless washing and management. So that's the next con. If you've made something that is delicate in any way, whether it's made out of a really fine fiber, whether it's made out of something that's non-superwash or something where the colors could bleed, which almost everything I make is non-superwash. The colors could bleed. If I ran any of these things through the washer and the dryer, they would felt, they would be ruined. So they get hand washed. They get soaked in a bin, pressed and dried, and that's fine. So that's the next risk that I think a lot of people run when they do a lot of gift knitting or gift crafting, is the care that the item receives on the other end once it's been gifted. So I think it's a great idea if you make things that do require any sort of specific care to print something out. If you have a laminator or a little page protector that you can put the instructions in so that they seem a little more important. And also maybe gifting a delicates bag. When I've made things, even if they're superwash, even if they're things that can survive a washing machine, I'll still give the recipients a delicates bag that will fit whatever I've made, and I let them know, when you go to wash this, hand washing is best, but if you put it in the washing machine, try to put it in a delicates bag so it has a little bit of a happier life. It's not getting so manipulated. So there are a couple of things you can do, but of course, all of that is out of your hands once you've given the gift. And I know it can be really painful to have someone reach out and say, the blanket felted, or all of the colors bled, what can I do? And there's not much you can do. Sometimes there's nothing you can do. So that's next on the con list. All right, 2 more cons. They're both quick. The next one is overkill. Are you someone who gift knits every year for every holiday? Are you making someone a sweater every year of their life? Are you making the grandchildren so many things that they can't even use them all before they grow out of them? Then I think we run into sort of an overkill situation where the recipients may be overwhelmed by how many items you're giving them. And there's just not time to enjoy them, to love them all before the season is over or before they outgrow it. So if it's your passion, if your love language is gift giving and you like to spend your time making things for others, you should. No one should tell you to stop doing that. But if you find that the people you're gifting things to aren't using them or aren't appreciating them, take a step back and think, am I making things that fit their style? Am I using colors that they like to wear? Am I using cuts or fits that they also like to wear and they feel good in? And then maybe, am I making them too much? It's not for me to say, it's not for anyone to say, but it's just something that made its way onto my list. And then on the flip side of overkill is possible exhaustion on your end. Is everything you make for someone else? Do you have really strict deadlines? Do you have an immensely long list of things that you're trying to make for everyone in your life? And if so, is it exhausting? I mean, has it started to burn you out? Does it hurt your hands? Does it hurt your budget? I mean, there are all sorts of things to consider. So if you're a crafter and you have people in your life that love your crafting, that admire the things you've made, that have requested things of you, it's always okay to say no. People ask me all the time if I make sweaters for commission, if I'll make them something, and I always say, no, I don't do that. I don't make things to sell. I don't do commissions because there's no time. It takes so many hours to make a full-size, adult garment or project, and it takes a lot of fiber. It takes a lot of money and a lot of your own time and skill. So if you find yourself completely overwhelmed, It's okay to say no. It's okay to scale back and find a new tradition or something else that becomes the yearly gift. And I'm sure so many people watching have the perfect balance of gift knitting, crafting for others. You're not overwhelmed, you're not exhausted, you're making things that people appreciate. So I think that's beautiful, and I want to hear about it. Now for the pros. I'll start by saying whatever you've made by hand for someone is obviously, to start, one of a kind, which I think is so hard to beat. That's so special that you've made something, even if you're following a pattern, even if you're making something like a Sophie scarf that tens of thousands of other people have made, it's still going to be different. You've used a different yarn, you might have used a different needle size or achieved a different gauge, and it's knit by you. It's made by you, which makes it unique to begin with. So I think that's the hardest thing to beat about a handmade gift. Trailing off of that, of it being one of a kind, anything you've made is priceless. The materials alone can be costly, but then when you figure in your time and your expertise of making something, it's priceless. It would be too expensive to buy or for someone to pay you to do. And then if you're making things that are catered to the people that are receiving them, they become heirloom gifts. They become things that hopefully they'll cherish for their lifetimes and even pass on to someone one day when they're no longer here. And the last thing on my pro list is that it's rewarding to make something for someone else. If crafting is the thing you do to stay happy, to stay sane, to relax, to keep everything in your life together, then it's really special that you can take that activity and turn it into something that benefits someone else, something that is a really special, thoughtful, love-filled gift that you get to give. I admit that my pro list is shorter than the cons. That's probably because I'm not primarily a gift knitter. So if you have other things that are the reason you like to craft for others, let me know. I always love to hear and see the conversations in the comments. Now for a closer look and a little bit of feedback on the projects that I've gift knit this year. I'll start by saying there are two things that aren't right in front of me that I did gift knit this year, not holiday gifts, but throughout the year. I made another sweater for Ned. That's the Modern Love sweater by the Bean Knits, and I think it's a really beautiful design. He enjoys wearing it. I think it does look modern. It's beautiful, a colorwork sweater. There's a little bit of three-color colorwork in the yoke, which can be a little slower or a little more tedious than two-color colorwork, but still approachable, easy enough for an advanced beginner to sink their teeth into. I will say I had some trouble with this project with the neckline, and I have a video, maybe two videos I made last year about it, so you can watch those if you haven't already. Someone gave me great advice to help save the neckline. I fixed it, now it's a good sweater, but if you're going to make it yourself, keep that in mind, that you might want to adjust the neckline to make it a better fit. So I think that was the first gift knit of the year. And then another sweater that I made for our friend Julie. I made her a weekender out of Malabrigo Rios in the color Teal Feather. The weekender has been sort of a gift knit that I've started to make. I made one for Ned, I made one for Julie, I've got another one on the needles for another friend. I find that it's a straightforward enough pattern that once you get going, you can do it in the car, you can do it when you watch TV, or even when you're visiting with people if you have crafting groups that you attend, or if you just like to take your knitting on the go. Now back to the projects I showed earlier in the video. Ned's cardigan is the April cardigan from Petite Knit. I looked far and wide on Ravelry for very simple, straightforward cardigan patterns. I didn't want anything too oversized or drapey or slouchy. I wanted something that would look pretty standard and could be dressed up. So I settled on the April cardigan. I believe it's a contiguous shoulder construction. I worked it in the round because I like to work in the round versus flat. So I added a little channel of steek stitches in the front. I did 5 steek stitches and then snipped that up at the end. I didn't even reinforce it because it's Rowan felted tweed, and it stayed beautifully. The sweater is seamlessly constructed. I think it fits Ned pretty well. And I've started one for myself, and I think I'll do another one as a gift knit for a friend that I owe a sweater. And I might add some cables, kind of dress it up even more for her version once I get to it. There's not too much to say about this project. It's very straightforward. I like the construction of it. The pattern was easy to follow, and I'm already on my second one. I think I'll do a third one, so clearly I'm a fan of the pattern. Next, let's take a closer look at Megan's 27 Color Snood. This is a pretty long snood, which is why I think it's called a snood, not a cowl. But it's essentially a cowl. It's just a tube of fabric, and it's made from wool stock. Wool stock is from Blue Sky Fibers, one of my favorite wools to work with. It's a non-superwash wool, stands up pretty well, it's sturdy, while being very, very soft. This is made at pretty loose gauge. It's made on a large needle, so you can see my fingers through it a bit. Gives it a lot of drape that way. If you don't like that, I'm sure you can make it at a slightly tighter gauge, but it's straightforward. You can see the increases or really decreases. It starts at the bottom. But the gist of it is that you're using a dark neutral and then 27 colors, 27 contrast colors throughout. Or I should say 26. I think it's 27 colors with the charcoal. And you can see close up, each band, each stripe is 2 colors. You get one stripe of one and then one of the next. Some of them are very close in shade. The blues are easier to tell apart. Here you can really see the difference. And that's the gist of it. The main color stripes get thinner the further you go up. You can see at the top, the stripes get much more frequent. And even the top, those are 2 different colors. You have sort of a neutral oatmeal and then a white or a cream. And I'll pop some footage in here of the Ravelry listing for the project. You can see on this model, you can wear the snood all the way down over your shoulders, like almost like a poncho or a shawl. And then you could also just have it hanging around your neck. So if you're someone that likes a lot of fabric, if you get chilly and you want something that's generous, I think this is a beautiful project. If you're someone that gets hot and doesn't need this much, then maybe a more traditional cowl would be your thing. But I had fun making this. It went by really quickly because you're never doing too many rows before it's time to change something, to do a stripe or decrease. So it feels like it's moving pretty quickly. I also think this would be a beautiful project to do from your stash. You need about 200 grams of a main color. So if you had 2 full skeins of a main color, probably something neutral, either light or dark, then the little stripes, you hardly need any yardage to do them. So the ones at the bottom, of course, take the most yardage. By the top, you're hardly using anything, especially if you follow this model where you're using a different color for each portion of the stripe. I think this would be really fun to do out of an advent or out of scraps. And you could do something like a rainbow, you could do a gradient, dark to light to dark, pretty endless. So I thought this was fun to do, and I think it makes for a good gift, as long as you know that the recipient is someone that likes a generous cowl, something like a wrap or a poncho to really be on them like that. Otherwise, you could make it smaller. All right, for my mom's gifts, the first we'll talk about is the Sophie Scarf. I'm a fan. I think that the Sophie Scarf is beautiful, it's classy. I think a lot of people could wear it, even if you think you don't know how to wear it. I mean, you can tie it around your neck once like a kerchief and have a little bit of tail. You could wrap it around twice to really keep yourself warm. You could drape it over your shoulders, more like a necklace or sort of a tie, something to really accessorize your outfit. And the nicest thing I think about the Sophie Scarf is that you can use really special yarn. I think this was only a 50-gram skein of yarn to begin with, and I used just about all of it to make the regular size, not the larger size, but the regular size that's included in the pattern. So this is made from Mayu that comes from Amano, and it's a blend of alpaca, silk, and cashmere. It's 60% alpaca, 20% cashmere, 20% silk. And it just feels incredible. It's silky, which feels stupid to say, but it is. It's silky, it's very lightweight, it's got a nice sheen to it, and it's incredibly soft. I also think the stitches are super duper even. I did block this. I don't block everything that's small, but I thought this would be worth blocking just to give it kind of the most relaxed drape and evenness possible. And it's beautiful. It's very simple. Some people have qualms with it because it's so simple. They say, why would I need to buy that pattern? You don't have to. If you want to just make a little kerchief and eyeball what you're doing, go for it. For people that like to buy patterns, that like to work from a finished, presented object, then I think it's great and I would recommend it. I do think that to make a Sophie scarf successfully, you either need to count really well and keep track of what row you're on, or use a sheet of paper, use a row counter, use a counter that you actually put onto the needle. Something like that is helpful. But I think if you use a little scrap piece of yarn to thread through like a lifeline each time you do your increase or decrease, then you don't need anything else. At that point, you can just look and say, am I on the right side or the wrong side? And then see easily when it's time to increase or decrease. So I hope my mom will like this. I think it's really beautiful and I think it's classy. And as I showed you, I made one for myself. I didn't love mine when I finished it. I think I like it better out of a solid, like my mom's. But that's fine. I'm not really going to wear mine for fashion. I made mine larger because I want it to be something I can wear when I'm going out for walks in the winter here when it's really cold. So mine, I don't know which way I need to go first. I might need to go around the front. And I'm probably hitting my microphone, so I'm sorry. So that's probably how I'm going to wear mine. It's not cute. It's not supposed to be cute. It looks like a neck brace. It's supposed to keep me warm. And for that, I like it. You could also thread it through like a little scarf. I mean, I think that's cute. Because mine's variegated, it's not going to go with everything, but that's a lot of nice warmth on my neck. And back to the idea of making it out of something special. If you make it out of a silk, if you make it out of a cashmere or an alpaca, something that maybe you don't want to make a full project out of, but something smaller, that's really nice against the skin. So if you have someone in your life, or if you like having that really soft gentleness right against the skin, then it could be something that you might pull all the time to wear. All right, the last project I'll talk about, and then I'll leave you alone for now. This is the Varenna Fingerless Mitten by Low Key Bold Knit. And if they look tiny to you, that's because my mother has very small hands and wrists, and I didn't want something that was going to be like too big or falling off of her. So I'll demonstrate. I think this will even fit on my pretty big man hand. Yeah. So there it is on me. It looks cute. On my mom, this will cover a significantly larger portion of her fingers. The thumb will be a little longer on her, and the ribbing won't stretch quite as much. I had two different people, two of my coworkers, Elfrida and Allie, try these on as I was making them, just to make sure I liked the gauge. And again, I wanted something that was going to stay on her hands and keep them warmer. I didn't want it to be falling off of her. So I think these will be a perfect fit. I didn't block these because I don't want them to stay stretched out. I want them to stay scrunched in until she's wearing them. The fingerless mittens keep a 2x2 rib throughout, and then the increases I think are beautifully placed to grow out of that 2x2 rib, kind of like branches of a tree. Very attractive, very simple. I know some people out there would not need a pattern to make a fingerless glove like this, but I like to work from patterns. I would much rather do my search, find a highly rated pattern, and then make what I'm making once, than do the trial and error to figure out the number of stitches I need and the rate of increasing and all of that. And that's why I love Ravelry. I love to find patterns and then keep a good library of things there. So that's it, the Varenna Fingerless Mittens, which I think she'll get great use out of. And there we have it. That's a portion of my gift knitting for this holiday season. And I hope the recipients will be happy. I hope they'll get good use out of these things. I hope no one will shrink the items I've made. I hope they'll survive. I hope they will survive for many years to come. As always, thank you so much for choosing to spend some time with me here on the channel. I'd love to hear what your projects are. I'd love to hear what gifts you might have made this season, what you're working on, what's going on in your lives. let me know. I love reading it and I try to respond when I can. So feel free to leave a comment below or write to me on Instagram, on Ravelry, or to my email if there's something you really want to make sure that I see. Thanks so much for choosing to be with me here, and as always, happy knitting, happy crocheting, happy crafting to you, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.